Welcome into NFL on 365 Sports. I'm your host, Grayson Grunehafer, and today we are talking about Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts finally have their quarterback. It looked like they were going to be in quarterback purgatory, but they finally have their guy. So I'm going to talk about kind of the implications, what the deal was, different things like that, as well as what's next for this Indianapolis Colts franchise. So the deal took place right after Deshaun Watson signed his deal, surprise deal with the Cleveland Browns. There was a lot of smoke. Baker Mayfield to the Colts was one that everyone had kind of been talking about, but people forgot that the Falcons pushed really hard for Deshaun Watson. And I think when they didn't get him, Matt Ryan just kind of looked back on his situation, just said, it's time for me to go somewhere else. And he waived his no trade clause because he feels like the Indianapolis Colts are in a situation where they can win right now. So he waived that clause to go to Indianapolis. Chris Ballard got the deal done. It was Matt Ryan to the Colts for a third-round pick in this year's draft to the Atlanta Falcons. That third-round draft pick was actually one the Colts got from the Washington Commanders for Carson Wentz. So the Colts still have the 2023 second or third round pick from that deal, as well as Matt Ryan now. The Atlanta Falcons will eat $40 million in dead cap, which is the largest in NFL history. And the Colts got their guy, finally. And it's interesting. The Colts continue to put Band-Aids on their quarterback position. This is 7 years in a row they're going to have a new starting quarterback. I think it just shows you, I know Andrew Luck had these situations where he had to retire. He felt like there was no other solution to the problem. But people don't realize how hard it is to find a franchise quarterback. And the Colts had one, a young one who was about to enter his prime, and they lost him, and look how far back it set the Colts. They were in a position where I think many people were saying for the next 10 years with Andrew Luck, this is going to be a Super Bowl contender, and instead they've had 7 straight seasons where they've had a new starting quarterback. And when you're talking about names like Scott Tolzien, Jacoby Brissett, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz this year, it's just been a mix and match of career backup quarterbacks, quarterbacks who you just pray are going to flip the script and find a way to really be good at football again, or an old guy like Phillip Rivers. And in this case, Matt Ryan's an older guy, 36 years old. But don't forget, 2018, he was the NFL MVP. They had the epic collapse against the Patriots, but he still is a very, very capable quarterback. And so this is a great deal by Chris Ballard. The one last year for Carson Wentz ended up being absolutely terrible. They gave up way too much for it. The Eagles have the number 16 overall pick because of it. But when you're able to flip him this offseason for a pretty good price, and then you're patient and you're able to get Matt Ryan, it's a big deal. And when you look at the Commanders, I bet they're kind of kicking themselves because they spent so much on Carson Wentz, and then all this Deshaun Watson thing happened, the Baker Mayfield thing, the Matt Ryan thing. All these situations, it ended up being the best case scenario for the Colts to just wait it out. Just wait, be patient. That's exactly what they did. So they passed on Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Baker Mayfield. They weren't able to get Deshaun Watson. The Texans weren't going to trade within the division, even though the Colts tried to get their foot in the door there. Did not work. And so they went and they were patient, and they got the best quarterback available. Matt Ryan is a bona fide, top 15 quarterback in the league with, in my opinion, a top 10 ceiling if you give him the right team around him. The Falcons were dreadful last year. When you look at them, 27th ranked offensive line in the entire league. They were terrible. They could not run the football at all, which put a ton of pressure on Matt Ryan to make a lot of plays for that offense. And it was an offense that was trying to play, keep away from the opponent's offense as well. So it was kind of a slow peddling offense, try to run the football, couldn't, put all the pressure on Matt Ryan. And now he goes to a place in Indy where The Colts have the 12th ranked offensive line in the league, and that's partly because their pass protection wasn't amazing. But on the flip side, they ran the ball so well, and that's going to take so much pressure off of Matt Ryan from having to throw the ball, 560 times like he did last year or 600 times like he did the 3 previous years. The hope is in Indy, he can throw for a little bit under 500 or right at 500, save his arm a little bit, save him from trying to make all these hero ball throws that Carson Wentz was trying to make this last season. So I think he's going to see a huge upgrade there. I think when you also go look at the fact that in the last 4 years, he has been sacked on average 43 times per season. That is an insane number. The 2 previous years, which were 2 of his best seasons, he was only sacked 37 and 24 times. So I think in Indy, he's going to have an opportunity to get below that 40 number and really be effective. I think the biggest area, though, where the Colts hit a home run is the fact that Matt Ryan is such an accurate passer. I mean, you look at his numbers since he's been in Atlanta, and really the second half of his career, he's really turned things around from a completion percentage kind of route. His first 4 years, it was not great. He was around a 60% completion percentage guy, which is kind of what Carson Wentz was, frankly, last season. But since that point, he's been right around that 66, 67% completion percentage, which makes him a very, very accurate quarterback, which is what the Colts need. They don't need a guy that's going to go out there and have to throw for 1,000,000 yards. They just need a guy who, on those big downs, is accurate, able to deliver the football in tight windows, find the open receiver. And I think Matt Ryan's going to be able to do that for them. And I know a lot of people have kind of talked about this idea that, why would the Colts do this, right? They're not going to win the AFC. Look at all the quarterbacks in the AFC. Look at what they've added. Look how good the Chargers are going to be, the Broncos, Kansas City again. Look how good they are. And I think people are forgetting the fact that the Bengals were a pretty mediocre team all season, and they still made it to a Super Bowl. And yeah, Joe Burrow's better than Matt Ryan for sure. He's a great young quarterback. But if you go look at Joe Burrow's numbers throughout the playoffs, they weren't elite. He was okay. Like, he made big plays down the stretch, made a few throws here and there, but he was not putting up 400 yards a game. They got there on the back of a solid run game, a opportunistic offensive game plan, and a good defensive performance that stepped up at the right times. I look at this Colts team, and I see a team that can do exactly the same thing that the Bengals were able to do. Run the football well, maintain time possession, play really good defense, force turnovers, and then have Matt Ryan make enough plays to win you a game. And somehow you could find yourself in a Super Bowl. And that's just the facts. I mean, they can absolutely get there with Matt Ryan. So I don't think this is a waste of a move. I know the AFC's loaded, but I look at this Colts roster and I still see a roster that can compete with the best teams in the AFC. I look at a division that is ripe for the taking. I know Tennessee's very good, but I think the Colts can be better than them next year. The Texans are tanking. Jacksonville is probably another year or two away from being, a 8-win team. They're probably going to be like a 5 or 6-win team next year, even if Trevor Lawrence takes a jump. And so for those reasons, I mean, you're looking at a division that they can easily win. You're looking at a schedule that's going to be much more doable for them this year than it was last year. They're finally going to get a full offseason with a quarterback, which they haven't had the last 2 years with Wentz and Phillip Rivers. All signs point in the right direction for this Colts team heading in to next season. So what's next? What's next for the Colts? They have $16 million in cap room. It seems like the positions of interest are wide receiver, left tackle, cornerback. I know tight end could be as well, but I think if they're going to address the tight end position, it would be strictly a blocker, which I do think they can find. I really like Kylan Granson, and Mo Alley Cox is definitely serviceable and proven. So if they do add a tight end, I think they can do that pretty cheap. Wide receiver they need to address, but a hunch of mine is they might wait for the draft to address that position. I mean, they have some draft capital. They could find a guy later in the draft. I know they have some young guys. Paris Campbell could emerge. Maybe they'll re-sign T.Y. Hilton. I also think an interesting storyline. Now, this one comes down to how much the Colts would have to pay him. But I would love to see Julio Jones on the Colts. Link him back up with Matt Ryan. I could see that being really appealing to Julio after what was a disaster season in Tennessee. If he's willing to come on the cheap, I think the Colts should absolutely do that. Take a risk. Because if that risk pays off, you have an elite wide receiver opposite Michael Pittman, which is something they haven't had in years. The other kind of what's next question is they still need a future at quarterback. Matt Ryan, I think, can give them, he's on contract for 2 years. I think he'll definitely play the next 2 years. But after that, it's kind of unknown. And so I think if they go into this draft and find a guy they really like a Sam Howell, maybe they really like him, or someone along those lines, Carson Strong, take a shot. Take a shot on a quarterback, bring him in, let him, learn under Matt Ryan. I know they have Sam Ehlinger as well, but I don't really see it with him as far as being the future of the Colts. But let a guy come in and learn with Matt Ryan. And then obviously they need to address the left tackle position because Matt Ryan is definitely more of a statue than Carson Wentz was. Wentz liked to run around a lot, and that got him in trouble a lot of times, but it also allowed him to get first downs and move the chains and make plays out of the pocket. You're not going to see that a lot with Matt Ryan. So I do think they need to address the left tackle spot, find a guy on the offensive line that can come in and help save Matt Ryan for future seasons, allow him to stand in the pocket, a clean pocket, and deliver the ball accurately. So it'll be interesting to see what they do at the quarterback position, but that's pretty much it. I mean, Matt Ryan is a guy who I think takes this Colts ceiling much higher. I think this could be a 12-win team next year because of it. And I think it's a great deal by Chris Ballard and company in Indianapolis. So Matt Ryan to the Colts. This is a big news. This is a big storyline. Free agency has been a big storyline. It's been absolutely wild, the trades and the quarterback moves as well. But for Grayson Grunay, this has been NFL on 365 Sports.